And welcome to Exit Stage Right with Martha Sullivan. This is a show where we talk about ways that you can build, buy, and sell your business when that time comes so you can exit stage right into your next adventure. Welcome to today's show. I'm Martha Sullivan, your host, and I'm thrilled to have you join us. Whether you own your own business today or you hope to in the future, this is the show where we talk about the business of business and ways that you can make the company its best and brightest self, as well as yourself in running it, so you can exit stage right when that time comes. So again, thank you for joining us today. Today's episode, Family Business Zinger, when your best intentions surprise and sabotage your relationships, really came to being after I recorded the last episode, episode 12, where we discussed the importance of transparency in our business relationships. You know, the premise being on the transparency side that when we lack information, our brains automatically have this amazing ability to fill in the gaps. In fact, there's science and research that shows even down to the split second of a blink, how powerful our brain is at filling at the gaps. Our eyes, for example, if we have a blind spot, the brain will adapt and it will fill in the blanks in that blind spot so that it can continue processing, and that happens in a blink. Well, in the absence of information, we do that automatically, I think, as well. Only I think it's more our imagination, our imaginatory part of our brains are kicking in and filling in the gaps where we don't have the information that could help us judge a situation in a fully informed manner. So this also got me thinking about a different need that we have for balance and transparency and equitability in our family business scenarios and situations. And it's a very strong need in family businesses for this balance. So for example, and I'm going to share my screen here again for a moment. So bear with me as I do that. So there is this continuum that we often see in family businesses. And on one end of the spectrum, the business may be a family first family business in the sense that it is very driven to serve the family. It is at its most extreme. It really focuses on the decisions being really formed and driven around what is for the benefit of the family. Family comes first, whether that be loyalty to the family, loyalty to the individuals in the family, a preference for the financial gain to the family at the cost of some business decisions, freedoms for the individuals within the family, in the business, whether it be using equipment or borrowing labor or whatever the case may be. But business best practices that curb those family freedoms in the most extreme cases are often tossed aside at the expense of the business and the business health. At the other end of the spectrum, there is the business first family business. And this is a scenario in which business best practice, corporate practices in its most extreme form, quash all the benefits and the culture that family business can bring to the table, and the warmth, all in the name of loyalty to the business, in the loyalty to the corporation. Everything is by the book, and it's more rigid, it's more formal, it's well, think the royal family. That is the best example I can think of a business first family business. The pomp, the circumstance, the formality, the rituals, the corporate tradition, and what's in the best interest of the enterprise, the monarchy, the royal family always takes precedence over what is best for the individual or a person, or in some instances, just caring for one another. It's all in the name of the monarchy and doing what is best for the monarchy. And on that extreme, you have fallout on that side as well, where ideally you really want to land somewhere in the middle. You want to strike a balance with your family business. And so where you strike an arm's length type of agreement to hold things well in the business, with a caring culture, strong business practices that actually have a degree of compassion and a degree of flexibility, but an approach that honors both the family and the health of the business for the greater good, for the family enterprise. It's finding that balance that allows you to honor that trifecta, if you will, of the family ownership and good leadership and financial acumen within the family enterprise. And it comes with that intersection. There comes understood boundaries of what lane do you belong in, what's appropriate in what situation, and how do we master that? Well, for my work in family business and consulting for as many years as I have, I know that this is much easier said than done. It can be a teeter-totter that is super, super slippery some days. And so I want to share some examples with you along those lines in terms of how the teeter-totter can get out of balance. For example, an adult child telling their parent that it's okay if they don't compensate him for the work that he does in the family business. We're not talking about a teenager here. We're talking about a fully formed adult, past college years, working for a living and being compensated in other ways, but still not any cash compensation for the work performed. Or a son-in-law that donates his time because he's an IT professional, helping the family business out with IT, their IT needs in the family business. Again, donated time. A mom who wants to spend more time with her grandkids, being willing to discount her billing rate and a project cost to help her daughter's company that is in another state where the grandkids are, so they can work together, but also she gets to spend time with the grandkids, and she's substantially discounted what her compensation would be for the project. Or another one that has nothing to do with time, people time and compensation, but shared equipment in a business between companies where there's no expectation or actual reimbursement between the companies for the utilization of the equipment. All of this is done in the name of family, out of a sense of loyalty, out of a sense of generosity, out of a sense of caring. And it's accepted with a sense of gratitude in some instances. In other instances, it becomes with a sense of entitlement that, of course, this is the way that it will be done. There may be that sentiment of caring and wanting to help, or to not make waves in the situation. So situations are allowed to continue over sometimes very extended periods of times. And then ultimately what this really represents is a need that is rooted in family, rooted in the family systems, and the family dynamics that ends up manifesting itself in the business and the business transactions. This creates, in a sense, not just the teeter-totter, but a playground that has limited boundaries, if any boundaries. There are issues that really come to be around respect for and regard for the other person, that you would allow them to work without compensation, or you would use their equipment without appropriate compensation, and for the individual themselves that are donating or letting their equipment being used without compensation, and what impact might that eventually have on self-respect. So respect comes into this in a significant manner. Now, let's use an example, if you will, of and talk through one of these as an example. We'll use the equipment example because it's less personal. So let's say you and I have we're co-owners, 50-50 owners in one company, and I also have a business to the side, and you have a business to the side. They're all kind of related, but we only have the one that we share together. Now, in each of these three companies, there's a piece of equipment I own in my company, there's equipment you own in your company, and then there's this magical piece of equipment in the shared company. And all three companies use each other's equipment, at least, when we get started, and maybe for the first few years, it's all really pretty balanced. And so it's easy peasy. We're just like, you know what? The accounting and the tracking and stuff like that, it's really, it's more time and energy than it's worth. And all we're doing is passing dollars back and forth. I give you $1, you give me $1. So let's just blow it off and it'll all work out in the end, right? And we go along for a period of time, and it does. It works out pretty evenly. But then my business, Martha Inc., is going great guns, and I have an increased need for the piece of equipment that is in our shared company. And I start using it a heck of a lot more individually than you do for your company, and even perhaps that's then a greater proportion. Maybe I'm using 1/3 of its uptime. And our shared company is using the other 2/3, and you're not using it at all anymore because your business has changed. But because we have this agreement, I don't think anything of it, and you don't either. But after a while, it starts to simmer, and it simmers more and more because I'm not reimbursing our shared company for the utilization of the equipment. The depreciation of the equipment is hitting the shared company. The cost of maintenance, perhaps the electricity and the utilities to run the piece of equipment, they're all flowing through our shared company. And we share the profits 50-50. So yeah, it's all even, right? Well, of course it's not even. It's not even at all, because I'm getting the double shot and you aren't. I'm getting, while we share the profits 50-50, I'm getting value out of the company for use of the machine, but I'm getting it really at half price because our shared company profits are diminished, but then we split them 50-50, right? So I'm getting a bonus shot there. And in my company, I'm not showing any of the cost of operation for that piece of equipment. So the profits in Martha Inc. are higher than they really are in actuality. So I got the double shot. I'm pretty happy about that, right? And it'll all work out in the end, right? It's all good. How are you feeling about that? Well, right now you might be feeling, oh, it'll work out in the end. These things bounce back, right? It'll swing the other way. I might have, yeah, it might. Well, this has been going on for 5 years now. You may not feel so good about it anymore. And in fact, there might be some real resentment that's starting to creep in, and it's starting to affect our working relationship. It's starting to affect our relationship as co-owners of this business and co-leaders in that business. And it may be spilling over into the family relationships as well. And then that's the equipment example. And then let's think about the example of individuals discounting their time as a perceived favor to another individual, whether it's discounting their billing rate, the project rate, or doing it for free. At a certain point, the resentment's going to build. And why? Well, because there's bound to be what I call scope creep. The term scope creep comes from the information systems field, the industry, which is actually where I started in my career. And think about it from the perspective of, you ask me to write a program, write some code that generates an invoice for you. And I do that, and you see the invoice and you say, this is lovely. You know what would be really cool on this invoice? If you could add some graphics to it, and then at the very bottom, add in this coupon, this tear off coupon that they could use towards their next purchase. Wouldn't that be sweet? Yes, that would be really sweet. But the definition of the project just changed. It went from this to this. And now the scope has creeped, and it's creeped, and it's creeped. It's crept, and it's crept, and it's crept. Grammar 101. So it's expanded, but the compensation for that was set for that first program of just an invoice. If I don't call a timeout and say, oh, I'd love to build that coupon and add those graphics, but that's not what we define the project as. This went from here to here, so that effort, the new effort, is going to cost X instead of Y. Scope creep. You see it in construction projects where they have change orders. It's the same type of concept. Well, let's think about the son-in-law that has donated his talents off hours because he's got a day job that does IT that's not for the family business. Maybe it started with he helped do the networking of wiring of the network in the business. But now all of a sudden he's getting the phone calls during the week when something goes wrong with the network, and he's expected to help troubleshoot it. And then it spills into, well, I can't get this program to run right on my desktop. Can you help me with that? The scope creeps and it expands. Same thing with the mom that's doing a project and has substantially discounted her project costs because she sees that she'll get to spend time with her grandbabies. But the scope creep goes beyond, and now all of a sudden she's feeling resentful because she's essentially doing the work almost for free because they're now expecting all this additional work at the same price. The scope creep happens because it's all assumed that it's done for the original arrangement. And because you don't want to make waves, you let it go. And the resentment starts to build and fester. And then it can impact the relationships. And the people on the other side are so thrilled to have the help that they may or may not actually recognize that they are starting to take advantage of this person. And it's really not fair, and it's not appropriate. Now, these are just a couple of examples, a few examples that I've seen throughout my career working with family businesses. And I get it. They're seemingly small acts of generosity and given out of a sense of care and love, but they risk planting the seeds of sabotage in the very, very relationships that are driving us to make these and accept these arrangements and these offers. Why? How are they planting the seeds of potential sabotage of the relationship? They can lead to feeling taken advantage of. They can lead to imbalance in value, in personal value, interpersonal value, and tangible financial resources. The lack of data can start to fuel some suspicion and sense that somebody's getting away with something, that something is really not fair anymore or equitable anymore. We might be setting up a trap for perceptions of favoritism in a family business, where other families are watching this, other family members are watching this unfold and feel like, why is so-and-so getting all that and I didn't? Trust takes a beating, and trust is the foundation of all of our relationships. So what do we do? If you're in the middle of a situation like this, I say, first and foremost, call a timeout. That's going to take some courage. Gather your courage and ask for a timeout. If you are being asked to step into an arrangement like this, I think there's some clear steps you can take right out of the gate to make sure that you set the tone well up front for a scenario that can be a win-win, still with generosity and love, but also equitability and fairness. So here are 8 steps that I've broken down to have you walk through as you go through this. As I said, you might need to screw up your courage for this, but you can do this. Pull up your big kid pants and do it. Define or redefine if you're already in a situation like that. Define what the scope is. Depending on how long it's gone on, if it's gone on a long time, you may or may not want to try and correct the past, but at least set the stage for the future going forward. Define the steps that really, define the scope and the steps that'll help you understand what the work is that is being done and how you want to go about doing it. Make sure that you establish it in a way that is an arm's length arrangement. That is, you're talking through what resources are being utilized, how much they're going to be utilized, and at what rate will it be reimbursed for or compensated for. Number 3, make sure you arrive at a price you are willing to accept without boxing yourself into an island of resentment later. For example, if my standard hourly billing rate is X, and I want to do this work, maybe I'm that mom that wants to spend time with my grandkids when I'm not doing this project. So I'm willing to give a discount to enable this to happen. And I'm willing to give a discount because I want my daughter's company to do well. And so, okay, a 10, 15, maybe even a 20% discount, maybe even 25%. Yeah, I might entertain that. And I can still feel good about that. I'm getting a fair price. It's less than I normally get, but I'm okay with that. But if you ask me to discount it 50%, I might not feel so comfortable about that. In fact, for me, I don't think I would feel comfortable with that. I want a fair price for the value and the expertise and the energy that I will bring to the work. So make sure you are arriving at a price that you can sleep with and wouldn't box yourself in. And at the same time, I know that by drawing that line and that boundary, I'm respecting myself, and I'm also setting the stage for the other party to respect me as a fair business person as well. Make sure that rates account for the costs incurred, particularly when there's shared equipment or shared labor that's involved. So if maybe you have employees are on your payroll, but they do work in my business, you need to be paid, reimbursed, not just their wage rate, but also the taxes that you're paying for them. And potentially, maybe there's a little incremental cost as well because they're not available to do the work that you might need in your company with the equipment and machinery use. You need to take into account the depreciation and the cost to run the machine, the cost to maintain the machine. You need to understand what I would call the built-up cost of running that machine for an hour, and that would be the starting point for the rate. That would be the reimbursable rate between companies, and that should be machine specific, not just a flat rate across the board. By all means, number 5, set up and use systems to track the time in usage of the resources. You have to set up the systems and you have to use the systems to track the utilization. That's the only way this works. Is it a pain in the tush? Yes. Tracking time and usage is a pain in the tush, but it's absolutely necessary and you will be glad that you do it. Document your agreement. Document the basis of what's going to be, what resources are being used, what's the billing rate for it, what are the payment terms and timing and things of that nature. Put it down in writing so everybody knows what it is and there's no disagreement. Set the stage within that documentation as to how often you're going to revisit it and renew it. I suggest at least annually. So if cost parameters change, you can update them in a way that is fair and equitable to all involved. Once you track that time and utilization, invoice it in a timely manner. Don't let it slide. Don't let it build up. Send out the invoice and deal with the intercompany accounting if you need to, but make sure that the invoice is cut and the other party, number 8, you need to pay the invoice in a timely manner as well. That way, everybody's books are accurate and they reflect an arm's length transaction that'll hold up in a tax review, as well as hold up in the family review in terms of what is fair and what is equitable in running your business. So that's what I wanted to talk about today in terms of how we very often set ourselves up for sabotaging the very relationships in our family business that mean the most to us. We start out from a position of love and family and generosity, or perhaps just a feeling of obligation that you need to do something, and it can get away from us. Don't let it get away from you. You find your middle ground in that family business first, family first, teeter-totter. What is that right balance for you so everybody feels that it is equitable and you have the transparency, as we talked about in episode 12, so that people know where things stand, and suspicion and jealousy and difficulties in the relationships can be really guarded against. That's one of the cruxes in being in a family business, is to make sure you set up the systems that embolden trust between the parties as opposed to potentially sabotage the trust. Thank you for joining us today at Exit Stage Right. I hope this was helpful for you as you go through your day and build your business so that you can exit stage right when that time comes, and indeed set the stage for a healthy company growing and and thriving every day, and within your family business. Absolutely have that trust and that balance between the family, your ownership, and the leadership of your company. We encourage you to join us at Providence Hill, which the Providence Hill website is www.providencehill.com, where you can scan this URL code, the QR code, I should say, scan the QR code so you can join our newsletter. And if you are a family business and want more information, check out the Family Business Consulting Group at www.thefbcg.com. Sign up for the newsletter there. We have tons of resources for you to actually build your business, grow and thrive. I hope you have a wonderful week. I look forward to seeing you here next week. In the meantime, I've got a really good feeling about this. Go forward and transform your business today. Kicking me out of my chair, dancing like I don't care. I've got that good freak. Shout it out 'cause I care. 'Cause say it